Part 1. The Christmas I Wasn't Wanted. Dad, don't come for Christmas this year. Her voice was calm. Too calm. Like she was cancelling a dinner reservation. Not on inviting her own father from the one day a year that's supposed to mean family. She didn't even pause before adding the reason. Michael thinks it would just make things complicated. I stood in my kitchen holding the phone, staring at the small artificial Christmas tree I'd already set up. One strand of lights wasn't working. I'd planned to fix it later. Funny how small things feel important right before everything breaks. I asked her, quietly, complicated how? She sighed. The same sigh she used when she was a teenager and thought I just didn't get it. You know, you and him don't really get along. And this year we are hosting his parents, his sister, everyone. It's better if you don't come. Better for who? She didn't say it, but I heard it anyway. Better for them. I told her I understood. Because that's what fathers like me do. We swallow words so our children don't choke on guilt. After we hung up, I sat at the table for a long time. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Her mother's chair was still. Empty. Had been for years now. But that night it felt louder than ever. Christmas came anyway. I put on my coat and walked to a small restaurant downtown. One of those places that stays open late. Because loneliness doesn't. Take holidays off. I ordered dinner for one. Ate slowly. Watched families laugh at nearby tables. At the end of the meal, a stranger at the next table looked at me and said, "You shouldn't be alone on Christmas." I didn't know it then, but that sentence would change the rest of my life. And 7 years later, my daughter would wish she had never told me not to come. If you enjoy emotional, slow-burn stories about family, regret, and unexpected redemption, make sure to subscribe. These stories don't just entertain, they remind us what really matters. Next in Part 2, who was the stranger at the restaurant? And why did they invite me to join their table? Part 2, the stranger's table. I hesitated when the man invited me. "You shouldn't be alone tonight," he repeated gently, pulling out the empty chair beside his family's table. "Come sit with us. We have too much food anyway." Normally, I would have refused. I was raised not to intrude. Pride can make loneliness feel safer than kindness. But something about that night, and maybe the silence waiting for me back home, made me stand up. I carried my plate over. "Thank you," I said quietly. The woman across from him smiled warmly. "I'm Linda. This is my husband, Robert. And these troublemakers are Emma and Noah." 2 children waved at me immediately, not politely, but genuinely. Like I already belonged there. "What's your name?" The little girl asked. "Daniel," I replied. "Hi, Daniel," she said, and then, without hesitation, scooted her chair closer to mine. No awkwardness. No suspicion. No forced politeness. Just acceptance. Robert poured me a glass of cider. "Christmas rule in our house," he said. "Nobody eats alone." We talked for hours. They didn't ask the painful questions. They didn't ask why I was alone. They just talked to me like I mattered. The kids showed me their drawings. Linda insisted I try her homemade pie she'd brought from home. Robert told embarrassing dad jokes. And for the first time in years, I laughed. When the night ended, I thanked them again and prepared to leave. I assumed that would be it, a single kind evening between strangers. But Emma grabbed my sleeve. "Are you coming next Christmas too?" I froze. I looked at Robert and Linda. They exchanged a glance, then Linda said softly, "You're welcome anytime, Daniel. Holidays are meant to be shared." I nodded, not trusting my voice. I walk home through the cold winter air feeling something unfamiliar. Not happiness. Something gentler. Relief. The next week, Linda called me. I hadn't even realized Robert slipped my number into his phone before we left. "Sunday dinner," she said. "You're coming." I almost said no, but I didn't. One dinner turned into another. Then birthdays. Then school recitals. Then summer barbecues. I slowly stopped being their guest. I became Uncle Daniel. And eventually, I became something I hadn't been in a very long time. Family. I never told my daughter. Not because I was hiding it. Because she never asked. 7 years passed. Until one afternoon, my phone rang again, and her voice sounded nothing like it did that Christmas. "Dad, I need you." Next in part 3. Why did my daughter suddenly call after 7 years of silence? And what happened to her life? Part 3. The phone call. I didn't recognize her number at first. The screen lit up while I was helping Noah with his homework at the kitchen table. He was struggling with fractions, dramatically sighing every 10 seconds like his life depended on it. "Daniel, this is impossible," he groaned. "It's not impossible," I laughed. "It's math. Math is just honesty with numbers." The phone kept vibrating. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then something, a strange instinct, made me answer. "Hello." There was silence, just breathing, and then a voice I hadn't heard in 7 years. "Dad." My heart stopped. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Every memory from that Christmas came rushing back at once. The message, the rejection, the empty house, the restaurant table, Emily. I whispered. She began crying immediately. Not polite crying, not careful crying, the kind that comes from someone who's been holding everything in for too long. "Dad." I didn't know who else to call. I stood up slowly and stepped outside so the kids wouldn't hear. "What happened?" I asked gently. Her voice shook. "Michael lost his job 6 months ago. He never told anyone. He started borrowing money, then gambling, then drinking." I closed my eyes. "And now?" I asked quietly. "They took the house, Dad. We have nothing left." I leaned against the porch railing, feeling the cold air on my face. "Are the kids okay?" I asked immediately. There was a long pause. Then she whispered something that hit harder than anything else. "I finally understand." I didn't respond. I understand what it felt like. That Christmas. Being unwanted. Being told you're a burden. Her voice broke again. "I repeated the same cruelty you experienced, and I didn't even realize it." The words weren't angry. They were heavy, full of regret. "I shouldn't have chosen him over you," she said. "I thought I was protecting my marriage, but I abandoned my father." I stayed silent because forgiveness isn't something you rush. It's something you feel. And honestly, I wasn't angry anymore. Time had already taken that away. "Where are you right now?" I asked. "We are staying in a small apartment. Temporary housing. The kids keep asking about you. That part hurt. Not because they remembered me, because they were finally allowed to. I never stopped loving you, she whispered. I was just too proud to admit I was wrong. For 7 years, I imagined this call differently. I imagined speeches. I imagined closure. But in reality, all I felt was tired compassion. People don't always hurt you because they hate you. Sometimes they hurt you because they're weak. I'm coming tomorrow, I said. She froze. You are. Yes. Her breathing became uneven again. You still want to see me? I looked through the window at Noah and Emma laughing in the kitchen behind me. The family I found when I had none. Then I answered honestly. Part 4, the first visit. I barely slept that night. Not because I was nervous, because I didn't know what version of my daughter I was going to meet. 7 years is a long time. Long enough for anger to fade, but also long enough for people to become strangers. Early the next morning, I closed the restaurant for the day. Daniel protested. You never close on Saturdays. I do today, I told him softly. He studied my face carefully. This is about your daughter, isn't it? I nodded. He placed a hand on my shoulder. Whatever happens, you're not alone anymore. Those words mattered more than he knew. The apartment complex Emily gave me the address to wasn't dangerous, but it was tired. Peeling paint, broken balcony rails, laundry hanging from windows. I sat in my car for almost 5 minutes before getting out. I wasn't afraid of rejection anymore. I was afraid of seeing how much she'd suffered. Apartment 2B. I knocked. Footsteps rushed to the door, small ones. The door opened halfway and a little boy peeked out. Brown hair. Wide eyes. He stared at me like he recognized me, even though we had never met. Mom, he yelled. Someone's here. Emily appeared behind him. For a second, neither of us moved. She looked older than her years. Not physically, emotionally. The confidence she once carried was gone. Her eyes held exhaustion and humility I had never seen before. Dad, she whispered. I didn't plan to hug her. I truly didn't. But when she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me, something inside my chest loosened after 7 long years. She began crying again, burying her face in my shoulder. I'm so sorry, she kept repeating. I'm so sorry. I finally placed my hand on her back. I know. And I meant it. The children were watching. A little girl held onto Emily's shirt. The boy still stared at me carefully. These are your grandkids, Emily said softly. Lucas and Sophie. The girl stepped closer first. Are you really Grandpa? She asked. My throat tightened. Yes, I answered. She studied my face seriously. Mom used to cry on Christmas, she said. Was it because of you? Emily's face fell in shame. I knelt down slowly so I was eye level with them. No, I said gently. It was because we both made mistakes. The boy crossed his arms. Are you staying? He asked. The question was simple, but heavy. I looked around the apartment, nearly empty. A small couch, a folding table, and 2 mattresses on the floor. Emily followed my gaze, embarrassed. We lost almost everything, she admitted. Michael. He left last week. He said he couldn't handle the pressure anymore. I didn't react, because I already understood the type of man he was. Have you eaten today? I asked. She hesitated. That hesitation was answer enough. An hour later, they were sitting in my restaurant. Lucas stared at the menu like it was a treasure map. Sophie whispered, "We can order anything." Anything, I smiled. Emily watched the children laugh, and tears filled her eyes again, but this time quietly. I forgot what it felt like to breathe, she admitted. You weren't punished, I said gently. You were learning. She shook her head. No, I was proud, and pride cost me everything. I looked at my grandchildren enjoying their food. No, I corrected softly. Not everything. For the first time since she arrived, Emily smiled, but then she said something that changed the entire moment. Dad, Michael called last night. My expression hardened slightly. He wants to come back, she whispered. And he said, you owe him. The air went silent. I slowly put my fork down. Then he's about to learn, I said calmly, that I'm not the same man he insulted 7 years ago. Next in part 5, Michael shows up at the restaurant, and what he demands in front of my grandchildren shocks everyone. Part 5, The Man Who Came Back. I didn't say anything else to Emily in front of the kids. Lucas was busy finishing his fries, and Sophie had already decided the milkshake was the greatest invention in human history. They didn't need to see tension yet, but inside, I already knew what kind of visit this would be. Men like Michael don't return because they're sorry. They return because they need something. He showed up the very next evening. I was in the restaurant kitchen when Daniel came to the doorway. You have a visitor, he said carefully. The tone told me everything. I walked into the dining area, and there he was. Michael hadn't changed much. Same expensive watch he probably couldn't afford anymore. Same posture like he still owned every room he entered. But his confidence was thinner now. Forced. Emily stiffened the moment she saw him. Lucas moved closer to her. Sophie grabbed her mother's hand. Michael ignored all of them and looked straight at me. So, he said, glancing around the restaurant, this is what you've been hiding. I didn't answer. He gave a small laugh. A whole restaurant. And you let your own daughter struggle in a tiny apartment? Some father you are. Emily flinched. Michael, stop. But he kept going. You could have paid our mortgage anytime, he said. You had money the entire time and just watched us fall apart. Now I spoke. I didn't make you gamble. His smile disappeared. I didn't make you lie to your wife, I continued calmly. And I didn't make you tell my daughter to uninvite me from Christmas. His jaw tightened. That was years ago, he snapped. We are talking about now. Your family needs help. I leaned slightly on the table. They already have help. He frowned. Then he said the words I expected. You owe me. The restaurant grew quiet. Even the staff stopped moving. I looked him directly in the eyes. No, I said softly. I never owed you anything. His face reddened. I was your son-in-law. You were the man who convinced my daughter her father was an embarrassment. Emily began crying quietly. Michael ignored her. You could solve everything right now, he said. Pay the debt I owe and we can all move forward. I shook my head slowly. You still don't understand. His voice rose. Understand what? I stepped closer, not angry, just steady. Family isn't a bank account, I said. And respect isn't something you rediscover when you run out of money. For the first time, he looked uncertain. Then Lucas spoke. Small voice. Clear. You made Mom cry a lot. The entire room froze. Michael looked at the boy, then at Emily. And suddenly his confidence cracked. He tried one last time. You're really going to turn your back on us? I answered without hesitation. I'm protecting them. Silence. Because this time, I wasn't the quiet father standing alone on Christmas anymore. I was the grandfather standing between a man and his family. Michael stared for a few seconds longer, then turned and walked out of the restaurant. The door shut behind him. Emily collapsed into a chair, shaking. Is it over? She whispered. I didn't answer immediately, because I knew men like him rarely leave quietly. And I was right. That night, a letter arrived at my restaurant. A legal letter. Next in Part 6, Michael files a lawsuit, and what he accuses me of shocks Emily even more than me. Part 6, the lawsuit. The envelope was waiting on my desk when I opened the restaurant the next morning. Plain white. Official stamp. I knew before opening it this wasn't a bill. And it wasn't good news. Daniel noticed my expression immediately. What is it? I unfolded the papers slowly and read them once. Then again. And for the first time in a long while. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was unbelievable. Emily arrived 20 minutes later with the kids. She had started helping in the mornings. Simple things. Wiping tables, greeting customers. She said it made her feel useful again. But the moment she saw my face, she knew something was wrong. Dad, what happened? I handed her the papers. She read silently. Then her hands began shaking. His suing you. She whispered. Lucas looked confused. What's suing? Emily couldn't answer. I did. It means someone is asking the court to force another person to give them money. Sophie frowned. Why would someone do that? Emily covered her mouth. Because the accusation written on that paper wasn't just money. Michael was claiming I had hidden family assets and deliberately refused to financially support my daughter and grandchildren, and that as her husband. He was legally entitled to a portion of my property. In simple words, he was trying to take my restaurant. Emily's eyes filled with horror. He thinks he can own this place. He doesn't think, I said calmly. He's desperate. She shook her head repeatedly. I never told him about your finances. I swear I didn't. I know, I replied. That wasn't the part bothering me. The part bothering me was how far he was willing to go. He says you promised to help us years ago, Emily whispered while reading. He's saying you refused out of spite. I leaned back in my chair. Then he just made the biggest mistake of his life. Daniel raised an eyebrow. You're not worried. I smiled slightly. Michael thinks I'm the same man from 7 years ago. The man who stayed silent. I opened a small drawer in my desk and pulled out a folder. Old. Carefully kept. Emily watched me, confused. What is that? Proof, I said. Inside were letters, emails, messages, and one very important recording from years earlier. the night, Michael told me, in very clear words, that I was not welcome in his home and that I would never be part of their family again. I never used it, because I never wanted a fight, but he just started one. Emily looked terrified. I don't want this to get ugly. I gently placed my hand over hers. It already did the day he chose pride over responsibility. Lucas tugged my sleeve. Are you in trouble, Grandpa? I knelt beside him. No, I said softly. Sometimes people do wrong things, and they have to face the truth. Sophie asked the real question. Are you leaving? I shook my head. I'm not going anywhere. But inside, I knew something else too. This wouldn't end in a simple argument. This would end in a courtroom. And Michael had no idea. He just forced me to finally speak. Next in Part 7, court day arrives, and Michael smiles confidently, until the judge asks me one unexpected question. Part 7, the courtroom. The courtroom was quieter than I expected. Not dramatic like television. No shouting. No sudden confessions. Just a room filled with wooden benches, low voices, and tension you could almost feel in the air. Emily sat beside me, holding my arm tighter than she probably realized. I'm sorry, she whispered again. This is my fault. I shook my head gently. No, this is his choice. Across the room, Michael looked very different from the man who walked into my restaurant. He wore a formal suit, his posture straight, and, most importantly, he was smiling, confident, like he had already won. His lawyer leaned over and spoke to him quietly. Michael glanced at me and smirked. He thought this was simple. An older man. A small business. No fight left. He didn't understand one thing. I hadn't stayed silent because I was weak. I stayed silent because I loved my daughter more than my pride. But today wasn't about pride. Today was about truth. The judge entered. Everyone stood, then sat again. Michael's lawyer spoke first. He painted a convincing story that I was a wealthy father who intentionally withheld support from my struggling daughter, forcing her husband into debt. He claimed I promised financial help and then cruelly refused, causing emotional and financial damage to their household. Emily's hands trembled beside me. That's not true, she whispered. I simply waited. The judge listened carefully, then turned to me. Mr. Carter, she said, did you promise financial support to your daughter and her husband? I stood. No, Your Honor. Michael shifted in his chair. The judge nodded. Do you have evidence to support your statement? I opened the folder I had carried with me. Yes. The courtroom stayed silent as I handed the documents to the court. Clerk. Emails. Messages. Written. Communication from years ago. All clearly showing that I had been told to stay away, not to interfere, and that my presence was unwelcome. Michael's confidence started fading. Then the judge said, Is there anything else? I hesitated a moment. Then I spoke. Yes, Your Honor. I requested permission to play the recording. Michael's lawyer immediately objected, but the judge allowed it. The audio filled the courtroom. Michael's own voice echoed clearly through the speakers. You're not part of this family anymore. We don't want your help, and we don't need you around our holidays. Stay out of our lives. The room went completely still. Emily covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Michael's face turned pale, because no argument can survive the truth spoken in your own voice. The judge removed her glasses slowly and looked directly at him. "Mr. Michael Hayes, would you like to explain this?" For the first time, he had no words. And in that moment, I realized something important. This wasn't revenge. This was accountability. Next in Part 8, the judge makes a decision, but what Michael does after the hearing shocks everyone even more. Part 8, the decision. The courtroom stayed silent for several long seconds after the recording ended. Michael looked like a completely different man now. The confidence was gone. His lawyer whispered urgently to him, but he barely responded. He just stared at the table, avoiding everyone's eyes. The judge reviewed the papers again carefully. Then she spoke. "Based on the evidence presented, this court finds no legal obligation requiring Mr. Carter to financially support the plaintiff. Furthermore, the claim that the defendant hid family assets for malicious intent is unsupported." She paused. "This case is dismissed." The sound of the gavel was soft, but to Emily, it felt like thunder. She exhaled a breath. She had been holding the entire morning and began crying quietly beside me. I didn't celebrate. I didn't smile. I only placed my hand gently over hers. Because this wasn't victory. It was closure. Michael stood up suddenly, his chair scraping loudly across the floor. His lawyer tried to calm him, but he pulled away. "You think this is over?" he said, his voice shaking. The judge looked sharply at him. "Mr. Hayes, you will conduct yourself appropriately in this courtroom." But he wasn't looking at the judge. He was looking at Emily. "You did this," he accused. "You turned him against me." Emily slowly stood. Her voice trembled, but she didn't step back. "No," she said softly. "You did that yourself." He laughed bitterly. "You're choosing him over your husband." Emily wiped her tears and answered the way she never had before. "I'm choosing the person who never abandoned me, even when I abandoned him." For a moment, Michael looked stunned. Then anger replaced it. "You'll regret this," he muttered. Security stepped closer, and his lawyer finally guided him toward the exit. He didn't look back. The door shut behind him. And just like that, the chapter ended. Outside the courthouse, Emily stood beside me in the sunlight. The children ran ahead on the steps, laughing, unaware of how heavy the day had been. "I don't deserve you," she whispered. I shook my head. "Family isn't about deserving," I said. "It's about returning." She cried again, but this time they were lighter tears. "I wasted 7 years," she said. "Then we won't waste the next 7, I replied. Lucas ran back and grabbed my hand. "Grandpa, are you coming to our house tonight?" I smiled. Yes. For the first time, I truly meant it. But life wasn't finished teaching lessons yet. Because that evening, while closing the restaurant, I found something waiting at the door. An envelope. No stamp. No return address. And inside it was a photograph. Next in Part 9, the photo reveals a secret about Michael no one expected. And it changes Emily's future forever. Part 9, the photograph. I didn't open the envelope immediately. Something about it felt deliberate. No postage. No name. Just my restaurant address written neatly across the front. Daniel noticed it in my hand. You expecting mail this late? I shook my head slowly and opened it. A single photograph slid onto the counter. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. Then my stomach tightened. It was Michael, standing outside a casino. But he wasn't alone. Next to him stood two men, older, serious, the kind of men who don't look like friends. One of them was handing him a stack of cash. I stared at it for a long time. This wasn't ordinary gambling debt. This was something worse. Emily walked in a few minutes later with the kids. She noticed my expression immediately. Dad, what happened? I hesitated. But secrets had already damaged this family once. I handed her the photo. Her face drained of color. Where did you get this? It was left at the door. Her hands began shaking. He told me he only owed credit cards. He said it was small. I pointed at the men beside Michael. Those aren't credit card companies. She sat down slowly. Dad, I think he borrowed from loan sharks. The words hung heavy in the air. Lucas and Sophie were in the dining area, laughing, unaware of the fear now filling the room. Emily whispered, Is that why he wanted money from you so badly? Yes. She covered her mouth. Oh no, he knows where you work. For the first time, the situation felt dangerous, not emotional, not legal, real. I locked the restaurant door. We are not panicking yet, I said calmly. Someone left this photo for a reason. Daniel looked serious. Someone's warning you. Emily looked terrified. Do you think they'll come here? I didn't answer right away, because I was thinking about something else. Whoever left that envelope didn't want money. They wanted me to know. Which meant Michael's problem wasn't over. It was just beginning. And somehow, we were now part of it. That night, I insisted Emily and the kids stay at my house. She didn't argue. As I turned off the restaurant lights, I couldn't shake one thought. Michael hadn't sued me because he wanted revenge. He sued me because he was desperate. And desperate people do dangerous things. Just as I locked the front door, a car slowly stopped across the street. Its headlights stayed on, and the driver didn't move. Next in Part 10, Final. The man in the car steps out, and what he says about Michael changes everything forever. Part 10, The man in the car, Final part. I stood still on the sidewalk, the restaurant keys still in my hand. The car's headlights shone directly toward me, too bright to see inside. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then the driver's door opened. A man stepped out. Mid-50s. Dark coat. Calm walk. Not angry. Not rushed. That somehow made it more unsettling. Daniel quietly moved beside me. You want me to call the police? Not yet, I said. The man stopped a few feet away and spoke politely. Mr. Carter. I didn't answer his question. Who are you? He reached into his coat and I tensed, but instead of a weapon. He pulled out a small card and handed it to me. Private investigator. My name is Harris, he said calmly. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here because of your former son-in-law. Emily had come outside behind us, and I heard her gasp when she saw him. Is he in trouble? She asked. The man sighed. Yes, but not the kind you think. He explained carefully. Michael had borrowed money from people he believed were gamblers. They weren't. They were part of a financial fraud. Investigation already under. Surveillance. The police had been tracking them for months, and Michael got trapped in the middle. The photo. I asked. I left it, Harris admitted. I needed you to understand why he was desperate for money. Emily grabbed my arm. Are they coming after us? He shook his head. No, but he ran. He disappeared 2 days ago after learning. He was being investigated for cooperating with them. He was scared. He thought if he paid the debt, they'd leave him alone. Her voice trembled. Why tell us? The investigator looked directly at me. Because before he vanished, he left a statement. He handed me a folded paper. My hands felt heavier than they ever had as I opened it. It was Michael's handwriting. I made everything worse. I was ashamed to admit I failed my family. I pushed your daughter away from you because I was insecure. You reminded me of the kind of man I wasn't. I tried to fix my mistakes with money and lies. When I couldn't, I blamed you. Take care of the kids. They deserve better than me. I'm sorry. Emily broke down crying. Not because she forgave him, because she finally understood him. Sometimes people hurt others not out of cruelty, but weakness. I folded the paper slowly. Will he be found? I asked. Harris nodded. Yes, but right now, he needs to face consequences on his own. He left as quietly as he came. The car drove away, and the street went silent again. That night, the kids slept in my home. Emily sat across from me at the kitchen table, the same table where years ago. I spent Christmas alone. I wish I could go back, she whispered. You can't, I said gently, but you can go forward. She looked at me carefully. Why did you still help me? After everything? I thought about it for a moment. Because fathers don't stop being fathers when they're hurt. They just wait. I didn't come back into your life to be right, I told her softly. I came back so you wouldn't have to feel alone. She cried, but this time she smiled too. Lucas walked in half asleep and climbed into my lap. Grandpa, are you staying forever? I wrapped my arms around him. Yes, I said, and for the first time in 7 years, I truly had my family back. ***, the end. ***.